They were once legends of R&B, singing voices that carried hope, desire, and even black dreams in a world that was never fair. But did you know that the people who made you cry with that immortal love song died in a shabby apartment, drunk, unrecognizable? Or that the woman you once idolized with her long hair and bright smile collapsed on the studio floor many times because of white wine mixed with sleeping pills, and they are not alone. There are at least 20 legendary artists who once carried within them a wordless pain that could only be released by alcohol and tears. What you are about to witness will reveal a tragic part of music history and may change the way you look at the songs you once loved. Be prepared, and if you feel sympathy, leave a comment. Let them know they are never forgotten. 21. James Brown, the Bloody King behind the stage. He was the godfather of soul, the man who turned every drumbeat into a cry for freedom, every dance move into a protest for a generation of black people. James Brown didn't just change music, he changed the consciousness of the nation. But behind the bright lights was a man with storms, born into poverty, raised amid violence, and incarcerated as a teenager. James didn't just learn music, he learned to survive through alcohol, control, and a lifetime of repressed anger. One afternoon in September 1988, James Brown showed up at an insurance company office in Augusta, Georgia. He yelled that someone had used his bathroom without permission. His eyes were bloodshot. His voice was hoarse with rage. No one dared to approach. He had a handgun in his pocket, and his blood alcohol level was many times the legal limit. Minutes later, he drove off the road in a frenzy, racing through several states, chased by police like in an action movie. When he was arrested, he banged his head on the door of the police car, screaming nonsense. The image of the legend collapsed right before the eyes of the whole United States. The TV station showed him in prison, his hair disheveled, his face distorted by alcohol. The public was in an uproar. How could a man who once sang "Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud" become such a symbol of decline? But after all, people did not just see a king falling from the throne, they saw an abandoned child, a man who had never learned to love himself after that scandal. James quietly went to rehab, then returned with an old appearance but softer eyes. He no longer danced like before, but his singing was still full of soul. He apologized, not because he was drunk, but because he had let pain control his life for too long. We easily praise those who bring light, but fail to embrace them when darkness comes. James Brown's story is more than a warning. It is the call of a soul who was once forgotten in the glare of the spotlight. Sometimes, being kind to others starts with forgiving the pain they never had a chance to name. 20. Joe Tex, the screamer behind the stage.
Nights ago, I was at a disco.
Joe Tex never sang like other people. He screamed, he moaned. He pleaded with his listeners in a thick soul-funk sound, as if every word was a cut in his heart, with his unruly musical style. He was once James Brown's musical rival, but while audiences only saw the vibrant hits, they did not know that Joe Tex was one of the most vulnerable artists behind the scenes, and alcohol was what made him fly and fall at the same time. A 1963 Houston gig became a dark legend among musicians. Joe Tex was invited to open a big show, but when he arrived, he sat backstage, his hands shaking from the cold and the alcohol. He drank white wine and talked to his performance jacket hanging on the wall as if talking to himself. Backstage staff said he threw a chair against the wall because he thought he was being followed. When he got on stage, he staggered and fell on the first note. The audience fell silent. He laughed loudly, shouted, "They're trying to kill me," and was dragged inside amid whispers and sighs. A year later, he wrote the song "You Better Get It," and fans believed it was directed at him. But the alcohol didn't let up. Many artists said Joe would curse at others in his drunken stupor, then sob like a child. His eyes were dark and never healed. Joe Tex could jump off the stage to hug his fans, but he could never jump off his own shadow, wrote the local paper. He died prematurely at the age of 49 of a heart attack. It was said to be due to illness, but friends believe it was a prolonged collapse from alcohol, loneliness, and unspoken grief. After the funeral, A friend whispered Joe didn't die because he stopped loving music, he died because he stopped being conscious enough to remember why he loved it. Joe Tex's life is a sad song that society often dismisses after applause. But if you've ever found yourself struggling with loneliness, have you ever used a smile to? 19. Johnny Taylor, the fallen angel in a white suit. Before he was known as the Wizard of Love Songs, Johnny Taylor was a priest. His voice rang out in churches, carrying faith and the promise of a better life. But that light faded when he entered the entertainment industry, where fame came quickly. Money poured in like water, but his soul began to crack. Born into poverty, Taylor used music to overcome poverty and loneliness, but when success came, he did not find peace, but turned to alcohol. Alcohol quieted the voice in his head, the voice that reminded him that he had lost the holiness he once had. One night in July 1977 in Chicago, Johnny Taylor was invited to sing at a famous tea house. The audience was packed, waiting for the song that had captivated America. But when he stepped onto the stage, people could see that he was not okay. His hands were shaking, his eyes were glazed. He laughed, but the first line he sang was the wrong lyric. Witnesses said that when the band tried to get him back on track, he turned and yelled at them on stage. Then he turned to the audience and shouted that someone was possessing him in the tea room. He then slammed the microphone on the ground, cursed, and walked out, leaving the room silent. The incident became a topic that spread in music magazines for a month. People said he was possessed. Some loyal audience members defended him. He was screaming for help, but no one heard him. After that night, Taylor disappeared from the stage for several months. When he returned, he no longer wore a white suit, smiled as much, and his voice seemed heavier. In a brief interview, he said, "When you've stood before God and the world still judges you, you learn to drink until you can't feel anything anymore." His life is proof that not everyone who wears white is an angel, and not everyone who believes in God knows how to forgive themselves. Johnny Taylor was a soul consumed by alcohol every day, not because he was weak, but because he could not find anyone patient enough to stay when he was at his weakest. If you ever see someone losing control in pain, don't laugh at them. Maybe they were once a bright candle, but the wind of life was too strong. And if you ever find yourself falling, remember being kind to others is sometimes the way we save ourselves. 18. ZZ Hill, the man who missed his date with destiny. ZZ Hill did not have the movie look. He did not dance like James Brown. He was not as saintly as Sam Cooke, but his voice rough, sobbing, as if he had endured hundreds of sleepless nights, brought the blues back to the soul of black people in the American South. He was a man who brought together people who had lost faith, but ironically, he was unable to connect with himself. Born into a poor, large family in Texas, ZZ Hill knew that if he didn't sing, he would drown in oblivion. But when fame came, he chose to stay with a silent friend, alcohol. One night in Baton Rouge in 1981, ZZ appeared backstage with 2 bottles of wine in hand. "I can't sing like before I finish the second bottle," he told his assistant. The band panicked, but no one dared to stop him. When he walked out, the lights were on his sweaty face. The first song, Down Home Blues, played, but he sang out of tune, slowed down, and forgot the words. Suddenly, he sat down on the stage and continued singing as if he were talking to someone only he could see. The audience was confused. The MC was about to cut the music when ZZ jumped up, raising his hand to stop. "I'm sorry," he said. "I can't stand the sound of my singing when I'm sober." The audience was as silent as an empty church. Some turned away. Some burst into tears. The next morning, the local paper called him a stage disaster. But another small paper wrote, "He's not a failure, he's fighting his demons in front of us." 2 years later, ZZ Hill died in a car accident. It was said that alcohol had caused him to lose control of his car. His career was halted just as it was resurrecting. His last album was a bestseller. If you've ever missed an opportunity because of your confusion, if you've ever missed a good appointment because you didn't know how to love yourself, then you'll understand that ZZ Hill was not just an artist, but a mirror of our fragility. And perhaps the kindest thing we can do for others is not to judge them when they fall. Just stay, to listen. 17. Syl Johnson, the silent ghost of soul music. He was once called the most forgotten man in soul music. Syl Johnson didn't have the flashy exterior, nor the backing of a major label. But anyone who heard "Is It Because I'm Black" knew that his voice carried the weight of a prayer from the heart of a black man born into discrimination, poverty, and injustice. Johnson had it all: a voice as raw as a coal, a blues soul, and the rage of an unseen man. But he lacked one thing: recognition, and that killed him slowly, through alcohol, loneliness, and long nights without anyone calling. One winter night in 1994, Johnson was invited to a Chicago memorial. He showed up late, wearing an old wool coat and carrying a bottle of wine in his pocket. The host hesitated to mention his name, because the young audience no longer knew who he was when he took the stage. Johnson looked at the half-empty auditorium and said, "Without a microphone, they used to say I was the successor to Otis Redding. Do they remember who Otis is now?" He sang different strokes to the sighs and laughter of the unfamiliar crowd. When he left the stage, he crouched backstage, finished his bottle of wine, and cried. A witness said that he did not leave immediately. He sat alone in the dark for a long time. He said nothing. No one dared to ask anything. After that night, the press did not report it. But in the underground, people whispered that Syl is not dead, but his soul has long been cold. Some young musicians at that time sought him out, asking for collaboration, asking him to contribute vocals. But he refused. He said, "I don't want them to remember me when I can't remember myself." He lived quietly until the end of his life, barely appearing in public, leaving behind few images. But after his death, his name was mentioned repeatedly because a series of his songs were sampled by famous rappers without permission. And people suddenly realized he never disappeared. He was just ignored by the world while he was alive. Syl Johnson is proof of a cruel truth. Sometimes you have to die for the world to start listening to you when you lived. If you ever feel forgotten, ever sit alone in the dark with no one asking, you are not alone. And if you see someone slipping away in silence, don't turn away. Sometimes a straight look can save a person's soul. 16. Ray Charles, the blind man who saw through the drunk. When mentioning Ray Charles, people think of Hit the Road Jack, Georgia on My Mind, or the figure nodding off at the piano with eyes behind dark glasses. He is the symbol of the soul of American music, a true genius, but behind all the fame, money, and lovers. Ray Charles was a man haunted by loss. He had been blind since he was 7, and he had watched his younger brother drown in front of him without being able to do anything. And in that hazy memory, alcohol and heroin became the only friends that helped him forget that nameless guilt. One night in 1961 in New York, Ray Charles took the stage in an unusual state. The lighting man said that he had tried playing his guitar backstage, but his hands were shaking strangely. When the show began, he played the wrong chord in the opening song, something that had never happened before. His voice was off-key, as if chasing a sound only he could hear. The audience cheered, but someone shouted, "He's drunk." No one dared to argue. It was the naked truth. After the night, a local newspaper wrote, "Ray is no longer singing for us. He is singing to keep himself from falling apart." Ray was arrested several times for drugs and alcohol, but he was released each time because of his great reputation. However, in a television interview after one of his releases, he said, "When you lose the ability to see the world, you start to create your world in your head. Alcohol and drugs just helped me not to get lost in that world." Many people loved him, and many people judged him, but everyone had to admit whether drunk or broken. He never lost his soul in his music. Ray Charles died at the age of 73 after many years of fighting illness. At his funeral, thousands of people came from all over the United States. No one mentioned the alcohol or drug scandal. They just played the recording of a song for you and let the tears flow. Ray Charles's life is the story of a man who was blind but saw more deeply than anyone else. He was not perfect, he suffered, but he taught the world that music is the language of souls that cannot speak their pain. And if we listen not just with our ears, but with our hearts, we may learn to be kinder to others and ourselves. 15. Sam Cooke, the party angel who died in the dark. Sam Cooke was an icon for a generation of black people who wanted to be heard. He didn't just have a voice that melted hearts. He was also a pioneer who paved the way for black artists to break into a white-dominated music market. With a change is gonna come. He brought America to tears, but behind his hopeful voice was a short life, full of controversy and endless nights of partying. Born into poverty and losing his alcoholic father at a young age, Sam knew the world would never be easy, and he chose to cope with it through alcohol, laughter, and nights of getting drunk and forgetting who he was. The incident took place on the night of December 11, 1964, at the Hacienda Hotel in Los Angeles. Sam Cooke arrived there with a young girl after a long night of partying. It was said that he had been drinking since the afternoon, talking and laughing and excited about a music project that would change the black industry forever. But just a few hours later, the girl disappeared with his wallet and clothes in a drunken rage. Sam stormed out of the room, wearing only a coat, into the reception office and confronted the manager, an elderly woman. There was shouting, a scuffle. Then a shot rang out. Sam Cooke fell dead on the spot. The news spread like wildfire. A genius had died, not because of art, but because of alcohol and a series of bad decisions during the night. Public opinion was divided. One side called him a drunken sex addict who lost control. The other side, his lovers, said that he didn't die because of a mistake, but because the world had never been kind to a black man who wanted freedom. Some insisted that the death was a conspiracy. Others simply said Sam was just lonely for too long. Whatever the truth, no one can deny after that night, American music lost its soul. Sam Cooke was not perfect, but he was the voice of millions who never had a voice. He lived a short life, but his songs live forever. If you have ever been lost in the dark and used a smile to hide your sadness, you will understand Sam better than anyone. And if there is one thing to remember from him, it is live kindly, especially when the person in front of you is not sober enough to love themselves. 14. Chuck Jackson, the one who sings with pain that no one cares about. Chuck Jackson was once a shining star in the mid-60s. His voice was as soft as a young skin, echoing like a whisper in the ear of a lover. Any Day Now is an immortal love song that millions of people have heard in the dark alone. But after all, Chuck Jackson could not keep himself in the flashy world. Born in an era when record labels were all about profit, Chuck, despite his talent, was out of step. No scandal, no noise. He was gradually forgotten, and he started drinking. At first, just to sleep better later, to remember who he was. In 1987, at a Motown tribute show, Chuck was invited to perform as a Survivor veteran. He arrived late, walking unsteadily. The technician recalled he sat alone backstage, mumbling the song, his eyes red, the smell of alcohol so strong that the whole room was stuffy. When he got on stage, Chuck forgot the words, repeated the chorus, then stopped mid-sentence. He bowed deeply, then said a sentence that left the audience speechless. "I'm sorry. I can't sing today. I'm not sure who else I can sing with." That show was not rebroadcast. No newspaper wrote about it, but those who were there clearly remember the look in his eyes as he left the stage, like a man consumed by his memories. After that day, Chuck retreated into seclusion, did not give interviews, and did not release new albums. He lived quietly and died quietly in 2023. Many young people no longer remember who he was, but hearts that were once broken by love, broken by loneliness, still remember. Chuck Jackson did not fail. He just did not fit into a world that had lost the ability to listen to sad love songs. He did not die of alcohol, but because no one asked him if he was okay. If you ever meet someone like that, please do not turn away. And if you ever see yourself in the old lyrics, remember the kindest thing you can do is listen, because sometimes a person needs that to continue living. 13. Etta James, the devil who sings on the ashes of her life. When Etta James sang at last, the world stopped breathing. But behind that song was a life that she called a bloody battlefield, born of an anonymous love affair, raised in makeshift rooms and the brutality of the streets. Etta knew betrayal from a young age before she knew love. She sang as if she had transformed, as if each song was a release from the nightmare that haunted her. But behind the halo was a woman always ready to fight with others, with herself, and with the past. Alcohol came as a savior, then quickly became a prisoner with no way out. In 1974, at a show in San Francisco, Etta James stepped onto the stage with a wide smile, but if you listened closely, anyone could tell that it was not the smile of a sober person. Backstage staff said she had downed half a bottle of whiskey before the show. When the music started, Etta didn't sing, but sat down on the stage, took off her high heels, and began to talk about a lover who had left her because he said I loved wine more than he loved me. Then she screamed the first verse of I'd Rather Go Blind, her voice as hoarse as a razor. The audience fell silent. Some cried, some left. The next morning's press called it a diva's panicked performance melting between alcohol and memory. After the scandal, Etta James disappeared from the stage for months. Some said she had gone to rehab, others said she had attempted suicide, but when she returned, she made no excuses. She simply said, I'm still alive, and while I'm alive, I'm going to sing as if it were the last time. Perhaps that is why Etta's singing always carries a tinge of sorrow, as if she knew that life is never gentle with those who have to save themselves from the darkness. Etta James is a woman who sings while bleeding, but she never lets that blood taint her music. She sings with all her pain, with her anger, and with her desire to be loved, in a healthy way. And if you ever find yourself losing control, crying over a memory that no one understands, then you have touched her soul. Be kind, especially to those who are smiling while inside them is a storm that never stops screaming. 12. Marvin Gaye, a singing body in a private hell. Marvin Gaye is the soul of R&B music. He doesn't sing with technique, he sings with a broken heart. What's going on is a prayer. Let's get it on is a gentle whisper. And sexual healing is a call to save oneself. But that man, the idol of a generation, lived a life where love, drugs, and alcohol were entwined like a strangling rope. Born into a strict family, beaten by his father since childhood, Marvin grew up in fear and inferiority. Music was his escape, but alcohol was his refuge, and in the end, it was that refuge that pushed him to his death. One night in 1983, Marvin Gaye attended a backstage party in Los Angeles. Witnesses said he had been drinking continuously since the afternoon. His face was pale. His eyes seemed lost somewhere that no one could reach. When a female fan approached to ask for an autograph, he looked at her for a long time and asked, "If you knew I died when I was 12, would you still want an autograph?" No one understood what he was saying, but a few hours later, he got into an argument with his best friend, believing he had been betrayed. The police were called, but Marvin had already left alone, in his car, with no lights, no direction. That night, he almost drove his car into a ravine. After the incident, the press reported Marvin Gaye, the artist who lost control of himself, but what no one knew was that he lived his last days in extreme fear. He hid from the public, from his parents, and finally, from himself. A year later, on his 45th birthday, he was shot to death by his father in the bedroom of the house they shared. The father said he could no longer bear Marvin's chaos and constant drunkenness. The death shocked the entire United States. People can argue forever about the cause, but what is undeniable is that Marvin Gaye was one of the most fragile souls to ever touch a microphone. He did not pretend to be strong. He cried. He begged for forgiveness. He loved as if it were his last day. And if you have ever been swallowed by sadness, ever felt lost amid your loved ones, then you understand him. Be kind, because no one knows what the person in front of you is fighting inside, and if possible, forgive, even if that person is yourself, because sometimes music cannot save the soul, but kindness can. If you are still listening, thank you, because not everyone has the patience to look deeply into the pain of people who once made the world bow down. 10 names have passed, each with a tragedy, an unhealed wound. But are we too quick to condemn when we have never lived in the isolation they had to endure? Are they to blame? Or are we the ones who are insensitive? Tell us what you think, because you are the rest of the story. 11. Solomon Burke, the eating king of soul music. Solomon Burke was more than just a singer. He was the king of soul, the man who laid the foundation for the fusion of gospel, R&B, and rock and roll, with his oversized frame, preacher-like demeanor and voice that could bring audiences to their feet in tears. He was once considered a sacred symbol of early black music, but what few people know is that behind the scenes, Solomon lived in a world dominated by his insatiable appetite, alcoholism, and loneliness in the very throne he had sat on for decades. One night in the late 1980s in New Orleans, Solomon showed up nearly an hour late. When he walked on stage, he was sweating profusely, out of breath, and had to sit for the entire show. Backstage staff said he had just eaten a large meal of fried chicken, cornbread, 2 cream pies, and had drunk half a bottle of hard liquor before the show. The audience cheered wildly at first, but when he started forgetting words, singing off-key, and stopping mid-song to wipe his face with a handkerchief, whispers began to spread. Solomon ended the night early by laughing and saying, "I've sung for other people all my life. Tonight I'm singing for myself, and I can't remember the words." The incident caused the media to once again focus on his weight and his bizarrely lavish lifestyle. But in a later interview, Burke simply replied, "I never learned to love myself completely. Only when I had food and wine by my side did I feel complete." Solomon Burke is proof that sometimes the throne is a cage. He didn't fall because he wasn't great enough, but because no one taught him how to be vulnerable without shame. Be kind, especially to those who seem to have it all, because they are sometimes the ones most desperately looking for love. 10. Percy Sledge, When a Man Falls on His Knees Drunk. Percy Sledge once silenced the world with just one line, "When a man loves a woman." That song is not just a love song. It is the sorrow of millions of black hearts who have loved in silence, who have suffered without daring to cry. But few people know that the person who sang that song lived most of his life in loneliness, swallowed by alcohol, born in Alabama in poverty. Percy worked as a hospital worker before being discovered by a producer by chance. But after his unexpected success, he could not handle the pressure of early fame, and apathy returned too quickly. In 1982, at a small show in Mississippi, Percy appeared with a red face and a broken voice. He sang the first part, then suddenly sat down in the middle of the stage, covered his face, and cried. The audience thought it was a performance, until he actually cried. He said, "I don't deserve my song," a sound man recalled, and then he called out the name of an unknown woman. The show was canceled. The next day, the press called it the emotional breakdown of an aging artist in regret. But to the middle-aged audience, it was a real moment. They didn't see a drunk. They saw a man with nowhere else to put his pain but his voice. Percy continued to perform until the end of his life, but the alcohol never left him. He wasn't perfect, but he was real. And sometimes, being kind isn't just about forgiving others, it's about learning to forgive yourself for your shortcomings. 9. Wilson Pickett, the Midnight Beast. They called him Mr. Midnight Hour. Wilson Pickett was not a gentle artist. He screamed on stage, grabbed the microphone, and fought with the music. His voice was a roar of the night, a wildness that no one could tame. But behind that energy was a man who was constantly being chased by the darkness, born into poverty, beaten by his father. Wilson carried the rage of a generation that had no control over their lives, and the only power he found was when he was on stage or when he had a drink in his hand. In 1991, Wilson was arrested in New Jersey for driving his car into a neighbor's house. He was heavily intoxicated. No one was hurt, but when he got out of the car, he screamed like crazy, insisting that someone was following him. Witnesses said he yelled, "They won't let me sleep. They know I'm about to write the biggest hit of my life," at the police station. He sang in the midnight hour as a threat, as a haunting. The incident caused a media frenzy. A great Motown artist, now a laughingstock. But those who loved him said, Pickett wasn't crazy. He just couldn't stand the world telling him to calm down. Wilson Pickett was the scream of those who had never been heard, behind all his drunkenness. He was just trying to regain the control he had lost since childhood. Be kind to those who are always up against the world, because sometimes the ones who scream the loudest are the ones who are the most afraid. 8. Donny Hathaway, Genius in a Bottle. Donny Hathaway was more than an artist. He was a gentle cut on the rough surface of the world. His music was like a painful lullaby for broken souls. But the man, the writer of A Song for You, the singer of Someday We'll All Be Free, carried within himself a terrible loneliness. Donny suffered from schizophrenia. He heard voices in his head. He doubted even his closest loved ones. and alcohol was the only thing that kept him quiet for a few hours. During his last recording session in 1979, Donny appeared in a New York studio with a dazed look on his face. His companion musician recalled, "He stood in the middle of the room, not singing, just closing his eyes and mumbling something. When we asked, he shouted, 'They're watching me. This microphone is tapped.' Then he fled the studio, wearing a dressing gown and barefoot. Hours later, he fell from the 15th floor of the Essex House Hotel. The police ruled it a suicide." Donny's death shocked the music world, but no one was really surprised. He cried out for help in every song, but the world only heard the melody, not the pain, after his death. "Someday we'll all be free" became a prophecy. It was as if he knew that death was the only way to quiet his mind. Donny Hathaway is not crazy. He is just too sensitive in a world that is too noisy. If you have ever been tired of being strong, of being exhausted, you will understand him. And remember, being kind is not only about helping, but also about listening silently when others cannot find the words for their pain. 7. Billy Preston, the fifth shadow of the Beatles. Billy Preston is called the fifth member of the Beatles. He was the only black man to record with the legendary British group, playing keyboards on such immortal hits as Get Back and Something, but behind the scenes, he was a boy who grew up in the midst of abuse, traumatized from an early age and never learned how to heal. Alcohol came to him as a friend, then quickly became a lifelong prisoner. In 1992, at a small show at a theater in Los Angeles, Billy stunned the audience. His eyes were bloodshot, his voice slurred. He repeatedly hit the wrong keys, laughed to himself. Then suddenly stood up in the middle of a song, slammed his hands on the keyboard and shouted, "I can't hear the music anymore." An eyewitness said that after the show. He was caught sleeping next to a trash can at the back of the theater, still clutching the keyboard. The public began to talk, a genius destroyed himself. But those close to him knew he was struggling with his past of being sexually abused as a teenager in church, something he never talked about for decades. Billy Preston is a heartbreaking example of the truth. Not everyone with genius is happy. And sometimes the kindest thing we can do is not laugh at someone who has lost their way, but ask, "Do you need me to listen?" 6. Marvin Sease, the drunken sexualizer of sadness. Marvin Sease may not have been a household name on the big airwaves, but in the black Southern community, he was an underground legend. Songs like Candy Liquor were not only sensual, but also confessional from a man who made no secret of his wounds. Born poor, raised alone, Marvin made the stage a place to let go of all barriers, even when drunk. A concert in Jackson, Mississippi in 1999 became the center of controversy. Marvin took the stage with a bottle of wine in his hand. Singing and drinking, when the audience reacted negatively, he sneered, then declared, "I sing for real and drink for real," in the middle of the song. He threw the microphone to the ground, knelt down and shouted a woman's name, then continued singing as if no one was watching. The press described him as a man who sings as if he were fighting with his memories. The community was divided, some condemned, others sympathized, but anyone who grew up poor knew. Marvin didn't get drunk because he liked it. He got drunk to survive. Marvin Sease teaches us that sometimes what we find offensive is a desperate cry for help, and the kind person is not the one who judges, but the one who quietly understands that no one chooses their wounds. 5. Johnny Guitar Watson, the devil laughs on the electric strings. Johnny Guitar Watson once stunned the whole of America with his thunderous guitar playing. He was a combination of blues, funk, and the arrogance of a man who was not afraid of death. But behind the fierce sounds of the guitar was a life ruined by strong drink, beautiful women, and endless rebellion. During a 1995 performance in Japan, Johnny stopped playing a solo, looked up at the sky, and laughed. He then told the audience, "I just saw my father. He said I'm going to die after this song." The audience thought it was a joke, but by the end of the song, he collapsed on the stage, still clutching the guitar. He survived. But rumors of evil possession began to spread. Some said he was drunk. Others believed he had seen the spirit of his father, who had beaten him during his childhood. Johnny didn't deny this. He simply said, "If I die playing the guitar, that's the way I want to go." Johnny Guitar Watson never wanted pity. But if you ever see someone laughing too hard in a crowd, remember, they may be hiding a cry that no one can hear. And sometimes, being kind is as simple as stopping to laugh when others are shaking. 4. Bobby Womack, the one who betrayed his soul. Bobby Womack was once the soul of 70s R&B. He wrote songs, played guitar, and sang like he was pouring his heart out. But his life was full of tragedy. After marrying Sam Cooke's widow just a few months after his best friend's death, Bobby was turned away by the entire black music scene. To forget the boycott, he turned to alcohol and illegal drugs. In 1985, at a show in Detroit, Bobby walked onto the stage with a glazed look, mumbling incoherently. When the audience started booing, he threw the microphone to the ground, shouting, "You only love my singing. No one loves me." A friend recounted that after that night. Bobby sat alone in his hotel room, drinking and listening to himself singing on a cassette tape, and cried like a child. The public only remembers him as the person who broke up friendships and ruined his career. But for those who have been misunderstood, who have lived with regret, Bobby is an example of helpless loneliness. Sometimes being kind means knowing how to silently listen to the pain that others dare not speak. 3. Teddy Pendergrass, the man who broke in half at the top of the halo. Teddy Pendergrass is the sex symbol of R&B. He sang for women, about women, making them scream at shows reserved for women. But behind that seductive body is a man running away from the past. Alcohol is his mask, and then it destroys everything. In 1982, Teddy got into a serious car accident while drunk in Philadelphia. The person sitting next to him was a transgender woman, a detail that caused a stir in the public. He survived but was paralyzed from the neck down. A brilliant talent suddenly collapsed in an instant. Some people loved it, some people mocked it. But Teddy did not collapse. He returned to the stage in a wheelchair, singing as if he had never lost anything. He forgave himself. And if he could do that, then perhaps each of us should learn to be gentle with our past. 2. Betty Wright, the diva who wipes tears with bitter wine. Betty Wright is the strongest voice of unyielding black women. Clean Up Woman is a manifesto of broken hearts who know how to stand up. But her real life was a series of days of fighting personal sadness, losing her son in a shooting, losing love, and her career forgotten. Betty started drinking. One night in Miami, after a small performance at a club, she did not return to the hotel but sat alone in her car, drinking and sobbing. Backstage staff said she whispered, "I sing to live, but sometimes I just want to be silent." The public did not know. The press did not report. But those who witnessed her remember the look in her eyes, resilient but weary. Betty never allowed herself to break down publicly, but if you listen closely to each line, you will hear a very faint cry for help. And sometimes, the kindest thing is when we are sensitive enough to recognize it. 1. Gil Scott-Heron, the prophet who died of thirst in his warning. Gil Scott-Heron was more than just an artist. He was the voice of protest for a generation of black people hungry for justice. With the revolution will not be televised. He ignited the fire of awakening in 1970s America. But the man who called for humanity to wake up was lost to alcohol and drugs for 3 decades, born without a father, raised in segregation and poverty. Gil wrote like a prophet, but when the lights went out, he was just a lonely man with no one to listen. In 2001, he was arrested at the airport for carrying drugs. When he appeared in court, he refused a lawyer, saying, "I know I was wrong, but you were wrong long before me." The prison guard recalled that Gil spent the night in his cell, reciting poetry to himself, his voice breaking in mid-sentence. A genius was burning himself out with the words he had once used to save others. The public doesn't know whether to love him or condemn him. But those who have read him, listened to him, loved him, all know Gil Scott-Heron is the brightest candle in the night and also the fastest burning candle. He doesn't teach us to be perfect. He teaches us not to pretend to be strong when we're broken inside. And if you ever feel like you're not being heard, remember that understanding doesn't need excuses. It starts with kindness to others and to yourself. Everyone has a dark side in their lives, but not everyone has the opportunity to tell it. These R&B artists have used their voices to beg for understanding. Don't just look at them when they fall. Look at them when they stand up, to see that kindness is still the proudest thing in each of us. Thank you for patiently accompanying this emotional journey. If these stories touch your memories or your heart, please like and share so more people can hear them. Don't forget to comment on the name of the artist that touched you the most, because sometimes it's your words that will keep them remembered.